Welcome to the Aegance Offscript Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders who share their stories, insights, and lessons, unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Lawrence, and I'm excited to welcome Richard Thompson to the podcast today. Richard is the founder of LayLaw, which is a digital consultancy offering accessible, affordable, transparent, efficient, and simplified legal services. Welcome, Richard.
Thanks, Lawrence. Yeah, great to be here, man. Thank you for having me on the pod.
Yeah, good to have you on. So Rich, tell us briefly what motivated you to launch LayLaw and what's your core vision for accessible legal services in South Africa?
I'll start with a kind of a slightly sort of tongue-in-cheek response to that, because people have asked me this, and I realized one of the main sort of catalysts for starting my own business was I'm a big golfer. And a lot of my friends who have their own businesses would ask me to play golf on a Friday, and I just I can't, man. I don't have leave. I can't. And then so that was one of the kind of things I was like, I want to be able to play golf on a Friday. And the irony is that I've very rarely been able to. Since I've started LayLaw, it's been going on for about 2.5 years because I'm so busy. But yeah, that was just kind of a sort of a funny reason, but essentially that, I kind of various reasons. I've worked in the legal profession, I've worked in practice, I've worked in-house for kind of large companies and organizations, and I think I saw kind of a gap in the market, or I think I did, for knowing how the legal industry works and how kind of inefficient and inaccessible it is to sort of smaller businesses, SMEs, and entrepreneurs that are starting out. And I just kind of, there are other businesses and consultancies that kind of have the same vision. But I just thought that there's certainly a gap in the market to help out businesses that are potentially priced out of getting legal services when, really that they need it. Especially as a small business, you need to protect yourself. You need to set things up properly. So that was kind of seeing a gap in the market. Obviously, also always wanting to do something for myself and build something for myself. I would say that was kind of burning inside of me in a way. So I would say that was kind of the catalyst for taking the plunge and starting my own thing with LayLaw.
Yeah, amazing. And if we sort of focus on that core vision question, I mean, where are you wanting to take LayLaw, and what's driving you?
That's kind of evolved like I said, I've been going now for almost 2.5 years. And I think initially I kind of had this vision of kind of like a lifestyle business, in that, it's not necessarily going to be too big. I'll kind of build out my client base, and it's it's very affordable, and I'm not necessarily going to be making millions. It's just going to kind of tick along, and sort of hopefully I can live comfortably, etc. But I think as I've kind of grown, my client base has grown, and I've got more kind of I would, less sort of just ad hoc work, and I've kind of solidified relationships with clients, and it's kind of ongoing or on retainer. I suppose wanting to potentially scale, and that's something I'm working on, to be a business where it's not just me. I don't have to be in the room, so to speak, for the business to run. So just sort of continuing to serve clients and just trying to grow from there. I think it took a while, but I think there's always that worry that you're not gonna get clients, or the business isn't gonna work, and I think it is working now, and it's at a point where I'm kind of, because I am kind of man alone in many respects. Like, I have suppliers and consultants that help me here and there, but kind of at capacity in many respects. So it's now about kind of scaling the resources and being more efficient with workflows and stuff, which I suppose is, part of what you are trying to help businesses with.
If you cast your mind back to founding LayLaw, I mean, founding a business from the ground up, it's never easy.
No.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced in getting LayLaw off the ground?
Finding clients initially, was a big thing. And I think I did do quite a lot of prep work before. So, I strategized as to like how I wanted, the offerings I wanted to provide. I had my website set up. I had all my contracts and terms and conditions, at the go. And then, I suppose I kind of took the plunge. Also, if I'm being honest, it probably would have taken longer before I actually did it, but I was fairly miserable in the job that I was in at the time. So I think that kind of pushed me to do it quicker. But I would say starting alone was a challenge. I mean, I'd never kind of run a business. I'm a lawyer. I've worked for companies in a law firm or for other companies where you just focus on the legal work. So it was kind of a bit of a shock to the system, while also exciting. And I've learned so much and become much more confident in the business side of things. But now you've got to do everything. You've got to try and market yourself. You've got to try and be a salesman, understand the business side of things. And I think I kind of went into it a little bit naively, like, I'm just going to do this by myself, which is very difficult. I mean, in any business, the nature of LayLaw is it is kind of a bootstrap business. There's not a huge amount of expenses. So, I don't have like co-founders or anything like that. But depending on your business, you need that kind of thing and to raise investment and whatever. But even for a business that is kind of doesn't have many expenses, you always need assistance. You always need help. You need to have a network of, you need mentors. You need a network of suppliers, and it's an ecosystem. No man is an island. You can't really, well, you can try to do it all by yourself, but you're going to burn out. It can be overwhelming.
I think from my experience, having founded Aegance as well, one of the largest challenges is overcoming doubt. You kind of start with a concept and you're like, this can work. But as you say, there's a lot of prep work that goes into starting your company and finding clients and doing your marketing and, reaching out to your network. And, you eventually start to see things ticking over. But all the time in the back of my mind is, is this actually going to work? It's a great concept, but is it actually going to work?
100%. I mean, that's constantly, and it's still there. You wake up and you go, am I doing the right thing? Am I capable? That's, I think as an entrepreneur, that's like the biggest hurdle to overcome. And I think we were always sort of grappling with that hurdle. That's probably the main thing to, when taking the plunge and launching something for yourself is growing, getting the confidence and overcoming that doubt, because that's always there. Yeah.
And so looking back at all of these challenges, is there something that you do differently if you had the chance to start again?
It's a good question, but it's also all part of the journey. I started where I started, and like I said, I am quite happy that I did prepare in advance. I think potentially I could have, in those early days, before I kind of went to market, basically fresh. I didn't have a single client, or I had my kind of service ideas and the website in the background. I suppose, this is a difficult thing to answer, because I do think when talking about entrepreneurship, there's a fine line between preparing and kind of doing all the background work and testing the waters and blah, 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 and then actually just doing it. Because, this is the thing we talk about. Like, a lot of people have ideas, but because of those fears and doubt, but then at some point you actually have to just do it, in the words of Nike. But you know, there's that line where you need to sort of be smart about your risks, where you need to test the waters, make sure that you're giving yourself the best chance. So again, I've gone off script, as it's the name of the podcast, but I would say, not much, to be honest. Like this journey it started where it started, and I've learned a hell of a lot.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, but I think you raised quite a good point in that all of the challenges that you face have obviously led you to this point, to a point where
Exactly.
LayLaw is doing well, and the sort of foundations are really well set, and you wouldn't be here had you not experienced those
Yes.
challenges. So it's a bit of a tricky question to answer that.
Mm.
But as a founder and the strategic decision maker, what would you say is the most important strategic change or innovation that you've implemented at LayLaw?
To be honest with you, I'm still kind of working on that stuff. I think a lot of things from a strategy and a business model perspective have changed, and have grown. I kind of went in with this idea that I'm going to be doing, I'm servicing small businesses, and I want to do fixed prices because, the legal industry is very untransparent, and people charge for phone calls, and I suppose from that, learning that, my kind of pricing strategy, I do try to do fixed prices in some aspects, like certain contracts that I offer, and packages, etc. But also, being aware quickly that for example, if I have to do a legal, like some sort of legal advice or some sort of compliance framework for a business, it's very, very difficult to just say, okay, that's X amount of money. So it's about sort of billing wise and pricing wise, it's finding that sort of, what makes sense and what works, both for the client and for me, kind of that value-based pricing thing. So yeah, I would say, from a sort of business model, that strategy's changed. And I think on the whole, I think I mentioned earlier, just kind of the overall strategy of just being a lifestyle business now. And I'm in this process of kind of scaling. I do have consultants that I work with. But I suppose scaling in a way that is, having like full-time resources, that kind of wasn't really the vision at the beginning. I thought I could just do, help small businesses and be a small business myself. But I kind of, I'm learning that I want to kind of grow this thing a little bit more.
Yeah. And I'd imagine that's quite an interesting balancing act, because you're obviously seeing the need for that full-time employee who can help you with, the admin tasks, or help you with wherever you're falling short. But then to find the resources to be able to provide a full-time contract and full-time employment to them is
100%.
Is a
Again,
tough balance.
this is, and again, that's what we're talking about, like taking the plunge and starting. But then, like you say, you get to a point where if you're going to take on a resource, whether it be another lawyer or someone who can, like you say, admin, salaries are, there's that now you got to pay someone monthly regardless if it's a full-time employee, and then you need to have the sort of the business cash flow to warrant that as well. And like at this stage, things have grown nicely for LayLaw, but if I do take on a full-time employee, that's going to cut like big time into my bottom line. So again, that's a kind of a plunge that you've got to take, because then you've got to increase your revenue to justify the employee in a way. So there's this theme of taking plunges is, it's kind of again, taking a risk and taking a leap of faith in many respects, I think.
Yeah.
There's always I've learned that I've never worked so hard in my life.
I mean, no worries. I mean, it just sounds like the idea of playing golf on a Friday afternoon is probably out the window.
Yeah, the irony is I am actually playing this Friday. It's but one of the few times. But again, I've kind of structured my week where I'm I've got to do a lot in the week before so that I can give myself that luxury of playing golf on Friday.
All right. So you emphasize efficiency, transparency, and affordability. Are there any internal systems or processes that you've put in place that helps you deliver that consistently?
So obviously, from an AI perspective, I would say from a legal, like the actual legal work, I'm sure you're aware of the kind of legal AI industry, and it's something that I've been exploring, and it really is. It's like a market that is just. It's kind of overwhelming. There are these businesses that have come out and it's like, we can help you with legal drafting and legal reviews and a lot of it. Firstly, there's like an overwhelm of, which one do I choose? There's so many, and in doing my research, you kind of realize that a lot of them are just kind of chat GPT that's dressed up in a different way. So, there's that kind of using AI to help with the work to kind of speed it up in many respects. But again, this is another kind of issue. Well, it's not, and what I'm learning with AI is obviously it's helpful in many respects. It can speed things up. It can speed up processes. From a kind of legal work perspective, it can certainly help. But I do notice, and I read an article about this the other day, which is quite interesting, is like someone is talking about from a kind of knowledge profession standpoint, that there's this, and I notice this in myself, right? If I'm using ChatGPT to kind of, answer a legal question or assist me, is this using AI like sort of so much that one forgets to think in many respects. So there's this kind of notion that, okay, I'll just ChatGPT it and not like, I think from a legal standpoint, AI is very, especially with drafting. I mean, review, like contract review, it's very, very effective. But again, a lot of these contract review AIs are designed for bigger companies. They're quite pricey, with many, many contracts across the company. Again, I'm rambling, but I think, for me, and it's important for me to just kind of verbalize this for myself, because, AI can be very helpful in the work and kind of getting the frameworks of answering sort of legal questions and getting kind of frameworks of contracts. But, there's a lot of nuance involved that, lawyers I still need to use my brain and just can't let AI do it for me. But to answer your question, I think streamlining process, I think, how to remain transparent and how do I remain, accessible and trying to live up to my unique selling points is a lot of hard work. I've got to, a lot of law firms will take, and this is one of the problems, is people, they take forever to give stuff and to people and provide the service, and that's something I try not to do. But also, I suppose I was a bit naive initially. It's like, okay, cool, you want me to do your entire POPIA compliance framework? Yeah, I'll get it to you by Friday. It's Tuesday, and then I put myself under pressure. So I suppose just tempering expectations with clients, learning. I think it's very important as well in a startup business is just be a good person, be humble, form a relationship with a client where you say, listen, I can do this I'm busy, but just keep temper expectations, be honest with people, and I think people react to that. Like I went in with this idea that I can, provide you legal services quickly. And that's still something I want to do, but also, it's not just about time. People want good work. So yeah, so there's a bit of work to be done on that front. Your original question was like, what systems and processes have I done to keep up that is something that I'm still kind of working with, to be honest. The answer is that the type of systems and processes are not there to the point where, as my client base is growing, pretty much the only way I can keep up doing that is to just work harder, and spend more hours, which is not what you want, right?
Certainly not. And I think just one comment on that is that there's definitely value that artificial intelligence can provide to
100%.
you, but you would need to be quite delicate with how that is overlaid over your workflows and your processes, because in legal services, what you are drafting is so binding. And if it's a copy paste approach,
100%.
I think you'd find yourself in some pretty sticky situations pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's from a kind of a workflow process and automating that obviously that can be very, very effective. But I just think from an actual service provision of legal services, it could be helpful, but there's confidentiality implications. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just talking about like the legal AI industry as it is. I mean, I think AI in general can help with so many things, and including my work, but the processes and the automation of stuff like that, it can be hugely beneficial. Yeah, hugely beneficial.
So you mentioned quite an interesting point there about the way that you handle clients and you sort of temper expectations. You've obviously built LayLaw around this affordability and accessibility, but how are you currently attracting new clients in a competitive space? I mean, you generally find, people require legal services when they're in a spot of bother, or they kind of need something very quickly. So perhaps they're more sort of ad hoc requests or ad hoc requirements. I mean, how are you attracting new clients?
Well, this is the thing, right? So being what I sort of call a fractional in-house counsel, essentially. So the idea is that, I worked in-house for companies. I was an in-house lawyer on the payroll, and the idea of LayLaw is to be a fractional lawyer for a business that, I'm not on their payroll, so it might be as and when, or a retainer for a certain number of hours a month. And to answer your question, I mean, that's the difficult thing with being, I suppose, a business lawyer or a contract lawyer is it's not like a litigation lawyer where, it's reactive, where someone, there's court process involved, they need help. It's selling the service that, okay, you do need to get your contracting in place. You do need to get your compliance in place. You do need advice around things. And it's kind of a proactive thing. So that especially smaller businesses and startups, that might be on the back burner. So that to start with, that's it. I mean, it's difficult to kind of sell that message. But yeah, like you say, initially it was a lot of ad hoc. And then I think, I do work with a digital agency that helps me with social media. They're kind of they kind of do like beautify the posts, but I have to come up with the ideas because a lot of it is kind of legally technical in many respects. And they kind of push me, I've got to get X number of posts out a month, and they're like, oh, you need to do this by tomorrow, and okay. And it's interesting because I sometimes wonder, like, is this being effective? Am I getting the traction and the clients? And I think it is. I mean, like you say, the nature of legal services is, it's not like, oh, someone's going to see a post and go, okay, Richard, it's as and when, right? But so it started off a lot of ad hoc, I suppose, a lot from my network. It started off with just network that I know. And then I think the social media vision, people, I'm there, whether I get, X number of likes on LinkedIn or whatever, it's still that subliminal message. And so I think social media has helped me a lot. People have reached out to me through my LinkedIn presence. But I think also just, doing good work. I mean, my initial clients might have been ad hoc, and then now it's a longer term relationship, and then you get referrals. So it kind of, it snowballs, it's just doing good work will kind of organically, your client base will grow. So, just as advice to any kind of founders and startup, like the initial stage is the hardest stage, I suppose. But as you do good work, you still got to market and but you get referrals, and you get sort of clients that might just want ad hoc services, or enter into a longer term relationship. So I think that's kind of how it's working out at the moment.
Yeah. Amazing. And I know that we've touched on this briefly, more focused on some of the challenges that you experienced and changes that you would make. But if we sort of look back, what's working particularly well at LayLaw at the moment?
I think, I'm very happy with my clients and the amount of clients I have, and how I've got a lot of sort of longer term relationships, contracts in place, retainers. So I think, I must be doing something right, because I know that a lot of businesses, sometimes, do we have the right clients? So I think from a work perspective, I'm very happy. But then again, on the other side of the coin, there's now that capacity concern, right? Where I've got people approaching me for contracts, and I'm like, okay, cool. I got to take the work. I got to take it, and I'll sign a contract with you where I can be available for X number of hours a month and help you with interesting work. But then I'm like, Jesus, I'm already at full capacity. How am I gonna do this? So I suppose that's the challenge, is now the resource issue, and building out, scaling, getting resources, and how do I structure that in a way? So, and also, how do I think, packaging my work, offering different services in different packages that kind of, that is just more kind of streamlined and allows me to provide value in a more efficient way, I would say. I would say challenge. So what's working is the clients that I have, and having a nice, what I think is a good relationship with my clients, I suppose, as well. Like, I've become friends with a lot of clients. We have a very nice sort of trusting relationship, and also the nature of my services is I'm not going to charge if someone phones me for 5 minutes for something. You're not on the clock or whatever. So I think I'm very happy with the clients that I have and the work that I'm doing. But with that comes that challenge of capacity, I suppose.
Yeah. And would you say that capacity is the recurring pain point that sort of keeps you up at night or wakes you up at 4 a.m, or are there sort of additional challenges that sort of are supplementary to that?
I would say that's the main one. It's the main one, just juggling the different things I need to do, and keeping on top of things, while doing, trying to do a lot of it by myself, trying to get, exactly. I would say that's the main one, is just having, just like you said, I mean, that does happen. And I think it's important to stress that point as a business owner or a founder or whatever, is like, and I never had this before, and I sometimes miss it, is that like my brain doesn't switch off, because I'm juggling different things, and I'm like, okay, I've got to do this then, and I've got to do this, and I'm like, I want to implement this new service, and like, I've got a Google Calendar, and it's just full to the brim of, not just meetings, and then I'm like, yeah, I've got to do this, and I've got like a 15-minute gap to do this, and it becomes a little bit overwhelming. And I think that's one of the areas that I think I need to work on, is just be like, block out time for certain things, because I find myself just sometimes spinning, like, I've got to this and this and this and this and this, and then So what was the original question again?
What are the pain points that are keeping you up at night or waking you up at 4 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah. I think just managing everything, and again, I think AI could certainly help with that. Just juggling everything and trying to get everything done. Yeah, I would say that's probably the main pain point.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly attest to the fact that I've had many an early mornings in the last couple of months where at 4 a.m. I'm just suddenly wide awake and there's no
Mm,
chance of getting back to sleep because whatever I'm thinking
no,
about is I just has to be solved and I have to jump in front of the laptop. So I
yeah.
suppose it's one of the pitfalls of being a founder is that especially when you're wearing all of the hats and you're the
Mm,
only one that can really
mm,
sort of make those decisions and implement accordingly. So
sure.
Richard, if we look ahead, what's next for LayLaw? Are there sort of any upcoming initiatives, any growth targets, any new service offerings on the horizon?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I'm just launching. There's two new service offerings. Um, Funnily enough, one is AI. So like I've been kind of doing a lot of AI legal services. So I've been doing a lot of research into, and I mean, this is your business. Like the kind of there are legal implications about AI deployment, and I've been attending a lot of webinars and doing some research into to AI specific contracts or AI specific clauses that need to be incorporated into various type of operational contracts. I mean, service agreements and and client agreements. These kind of traditional agreements don't take into account the use of AI. So there's scope for that, just advice around safe AI deployment and AI use policies within companies. And so I'm quite excited about that. I'm going to be launching that service soon, as well as what I'm calling a 60-minute strategy session. So, I was thinking about, again, ways this could speed up the process, right? So if I get someone reaches out to me and let's just do like a kind of like a strategic session about where you are with your legals in your business and provide me information. We can meet and we can just hash things out for 60 minutes. So that's a new kind of service idea. I'm still tinkering with it, but that's going to be launched. So yeah, that's exciting. And in terms of growth targets, yeah, I mean, like I think I've mentioned throughout this thing is kind of focusing on scaling, scaling and getting more resources, and through that hopefully growing revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that sounds like some really, really cool initiatives. Wish you all the best with that. I always like to ask my guests if you had a magic wand and you'd love to sort of, wave it and you could solve anything where time, resources, and budgets weren't a constraint, what would that be?
If I had imagined one, I could solve anything where time, resources, and budget weren't a constraint, like in my specific business or
In your
like in the
business, not in the
world,
world.
or okay, we're not talking about like solving world hunger and
No,
world peace.
no, that might
Um,
be another podcast.
um, if I okay, so if time, resources, capacity weren't an issue, um, yeah, I would just like to sort of help more businesses with getting their legal affairs in order. I think it's startups and smaller businesses, like we say, that they don't necessarily have the resources, and the legal industry as a whole it's very much like an elitist industry for bigger companies, and I think smaller businesses need that legal assistance and they need that legal framework and guidance. And so I think I would, if I didn't have resource constraints and capacity constraints, I would just like to sort of grow this message and try and get like legal assistance into into the hands of the smaller business and the startup business and the entrepreneur and your freelancers and your consultants and people that maybe sometimes get messed around by the larger organizations that they contract with, or because they have the bargaining power, and they just provide, for example, a contract to a consultant that is unfair, and then they don't pay on time because the payment terms are not are not in the consultant's favor. So I think that would be my answer if I didn't have budget constraints and resource constraints, and would just be to focus on that market and providing these services to people that need them in a way. There's you've got your legal aids that help people, individuals, but I just think there's a lack of this kind of help for businesses with legal assistance. So yeah, that would be my goal.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so then just to sort of wrap things up, in closing, if there was one message you'd like the listeners of the podcast, especially sort of entrepreneurs and small business leaders, to take away from your experience in building LayLaw, what would that be?
Well, I think from the entrepreneur, whether they're thinking about it or they're aspiring to that, is it's easier said than done, right? Because also people have different circumstances. So you might not have the fallback to take a risk and start your own thing and give up kind of salaried employment. But I think if you are thinking about doing it, we discussed this earlier, plan well, sort of give yourself the best opportunity for it to work, and then just do it. Maybe also don't do it. It's always tough because if you're employed, you might have like restraints of trade or whatever, but work after hours, get yourself, and then just do it. Like you got to take the plunge, and like we spoke about, there's that doubt. There's always going to be that doubt. It's not abnormal to have that doubt. We both have it as founders, etc. But be brave if it's what you want to do. If that's how you see your life, if you want to build your own thing and run things on your own terms, and to, I suppose, to the smaller business owners and stuff, is from my standpoint is just be nice, be humble, be kind, because I think that's something that's quite a lot of feedback that I've got from my clients, is that like you're different to other lawyers. You're not like, lawyers have this kind of this perception of, these guys are sharks and they're like this, and guys are like, well, you don't really act like a lawyer. Like, I think it's very important, to differentiate yourself in business. Like, just be a good person, be open with people, be honest. Like I talked about the tempering expectations. Like, I'll get this to you, but I've got this on, and I'll get this to you by this date. And, just be a good person, and people will gravitate towards that. People like to work with, in my experience, people like to work with, I don't want to say that people like me, because a lot of people don't like me in this world, but, be a person that people like to work with and like to engage with. I think that is quite a good broad message for people starting out in business, because there are a lot of people that aren't. There are a lot of, and a lot of successful people notoriously weren't. They talk about like Steve Jobs being like an absolute maniac to work for, and so there's I suppose there's scope for that in many aspects, but I think that would be just kind of a broad piece of advice, is just be someone that people want to engage with, and I think that'll take you a long way.
Yeah, really pertinent and sound advice. So hopefully the listeners will take those gems away. So let's leave it at that, Richard. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for taking the time to join us on the podcast, and I wish you all the best at LayLaw.
Thanks, Lawrence. You too, man. Wish you all the best with Aegance. It's very, very exciting initiative, and I look forward to watching it grow.
Cool, man. Thanks everyone.
Thanks very much.